last question, and then I'll open it up to the audience. Some people have criticized the length of this report. I don't know if everyone has a copy of it, but it's extremely short. So what do you say to this criticism, and why is it so short?
Yeah, sure. You say it very nicely.
It's deliberately short so that it's possible for actual normal Americans to read it and understand it. The idea was to lay out for the American people what the actual situation in Afghanistan is and what our real alternative is, so that they could then fully participate in the dialogue. Frankly, far too much of the dialogue around national security in this country takes place in the, if you aren't one of the people making decisions, you shouldn't have a voice in it frame, and that's no way to run a democracy. And so this was quite intentionally designed to be understandable by basically anybody who wants to pick it up and read it.
I'll add that in addition to being accessible, we have a website, the AfghanistanStudyGroup.org website, where there's a host of other resources, whether they be links or articles or whatnot, that provide more information. We want to frame this in a manner that didn't get lost in the weeds. Too many times with Afghanistan, people don't see the proverbial forest because of the trees. Particularly, when I was talking about earlier about how we've built their strategy from the bottom up rather from the top down, particularly when I talk with the military, with my former counterparts, they get lost in the tactical or the operational perspectives. Whether or not we can clear and hold and build in Marja, whether or not 30,000 troops are going to expand that ink blot further out, as opposed to asking the questions, why should we clear and hold and build Marja? Does it really matter to us if we expand those ink blocks out in terms of benefits to the United States in national security terms? So we wanted to address the forest rather than the individual trees. There are a number of resources we provide for people who have specific concerns about whether it be economic issues, whether it be about issues relating to international terrorism, whether it be issues relating to women's rights, whether it be issues relating to the politics of this issue, whether internal to the United States, whether internal to Afghanistan, whether on an international level. As Darcy said, it was deliberately meant to be accessible to as many people as possible. We also, too, the purpose of this group is to actually change policy. We just didn't want to be an organization sponsored by a couple think tanks that just puts out publications and doesn't actually do anything. Everybody who's a member of this organization actually wants to change policy for a variety of different reasons. Some people see this in a grand foreign policy perspective. The term I heard is from a very senior retired congressman who said, this is sucking the guts out of us. It's distracting us from other issues around the world. We're putting all our emphasis, all our time and energy on Afghanistan, and it's frankly not that important to us. There are people who are concerned with the economic interests of it. I heard the other day Amtrak has a plan to put high-speed rail from DC to Boston. Okay, it's going to take 30 years. Okay, I'm not sure how it's going to take 30 years, but it'll take 30 years, right? But it's going to triple capacity, and it'll go about 250 miles an hour, so you can get from here to New York in an hour. And anyone who's taking, travel up this Northeast corridor knows we need something like that. The cost, $117 billion. You know what, according to CRS, the projected cost for FY11 is for the Afghanistan war? $119 billion. So the other issue of cost, and Darcy got into this before, is that it's not just the $100+ billion a year we're spending right now, but if you listen to Joe Stiglitz and Linda Vilmus, who put out the book $3 Trillion War, they've come back and they've said that, you know what, we're off. We were too conservative in our estimates. These wars are actually going to cost $4 to $6 trillion. And peak costs for our veterans aren't going to occur for another 50 years. Our vets are, say, roughly 25 years of age. Their peak costs won't be until they reach retirement. So you're talking about peak costs for veterans care topping out in 2060. These are wars that we are going to have to expend hundreds of billions of dollars on per year for the rest of our lives. So there's economic costs. And then there's other costs too, in the sense of, as Paul spoke, we're fighting Taliban in Afghanistan. We're not fighting Al-Qaeda. They are a dispersed, decentralized organization around the world that is not affected by Army or Marine, Brigade, or Regimental Combat Teams occupying ground. They just aren't. We don't affect them. And then there's a moral perspective on this. Should the U.S. have young Marines and soldiers fighting and dying for a kleptocratic and fraudulent government that has stolen 2 elections in a row? Is there any moral worth in that? Is that going to be a shame on us 15 years from now? And then the other moral part, I'm sure all of your bosses all have members in the district who have sons or husbands or wives or daughters serving over there. And they're not fighting Al-Qaeda there, they're fighting Taliban, who are fighting us primarily because we're occupying their valuable villages. And so it's incumbent upon us as leaders in this country to make, because our Marines and soldiers are going to do anything we ask them, anything. But it's incumbent upon us to make sure we're asking them to do what's actually in interest to this country. So there's a variety of reasons, why people have signed on to this, why people support us, and we're not doctrinal. I mean, like I said before, this is a consensus document. I'm the director of this project. I agree with about 85% of the document. Okay, so what we're trying to do is build this foundation of people who are saying, hey, after 9 years, hundreds of billions of dollars, almost 1,300 lives lost. It's not affecting Al-Qaeda. It's not making it safer. It's destabilizing the region. We need to shift strategy.
I'd like to add one comment about the question on the length of the report. The report was never intended to be a self-sufficient, standalone, explain everything resource on Afghanistan. One of the reactions we have received to it has been, well, some of what you guys seem to be recommending is very much in line with elements of existing policy. I think the biggest exception is what we say about troop drawdown trajectories. But that observation is correct. And so we didn't feel any purpose would be served by serving as an encyclopedic reference for some of these other policy issues. One I would cite in particular has to do with the broad-based nature of any political settlement inside Afghanistan that would be necessary in order for a modicum of stability to come to that country. I personally am very encouraged by and applaud what we read about in the papers this morning, and of course we got some press on it just a couple of weeks ago, about the talks, or at least preliminary talks, going on involving the Karzai government and reportedly representatives of the Quetta Shura itself. I think that is a good thing. I think it is a good thing, per the press reports this morning, that our side, the NATO side, is facilitating such talks. This is entirely consistent with what we indicated in the report about the need for broad-based political deliberations if a modicum of stability is to be brought to this country.